And also, interestingly, men who exercise regularly also have sex more frequently than men who don't. I'm Heather Grzych, and this is the Wisdom of the Body podcast. This podcast explores the idea of body intelligence as the real key to learning the knowledge of life, or what we call Ayurveda in the ancient language of Sanskrit. We do that by connecting with today's creative leaders and experts who will help you listen to your body, trust your gut, and live in deeper harmony with nature. Come join me as we unlock the golden door to clear, direct perception and become very deep listeners. You can find the Wisdom of the Body podcast on Apple, Spotify, and Stitcher. You can also follow us by joining my email at heathergrzych.com or on Instagram at heathergrzych. I know you're going to love this podcast, so take a second right now to subscribe. Y'all, I know that it's women who are all up on this fertility thing, doing everything they can to make sure that the baby of the future is guaranteed a spot on this spinning rock called Earth. But what are the men doing? Every time through the years I've attended some kind of self-care type of event or yoga class or yoga teacher training, or maybe when I was in Ayurveda school, I will say that largely the people who show up are all female. There are maybe one or two guys in the class. You know, I get it. These are things that lots of females normally think of as self-care. And maybe if I went over to a CrossFit gym or a boxing gym, then I might see different demographics over there. The question is, who's putting in the self-care focus here? When I'm writing, sometimes I'll research different topics. Some of my favorite sources to research scientific and biological topics are PubMed. I like to pore through translated versions of ancient Ayurvedic texts that I have in my house. I like to look through public health data through the CDC. I like to go to the Kaiser Family Foundation. But when I am trying to understand collectively what is in people's minds and the culture, that's when I turn to Google. So I like to look up search term trends. And I do this because, to be honest, I often feel very disconnected from normal people in the world. I want to know, how are other people thinking? What are they curious about? I really often feel like an alien. So this week, when I was writing a submission about fertility and self-care in a colleague's upcoming book, I went to Google Trends to kind of see where are people at these days on the topic of self-care as it relates to fertility. Is there more or less interest in this topic? I went into it with an assumption that females are just way more interested in taking care of themselves. And then by the end of the various searches I did, I was no longer really sure that that is true. Okay, now keep in mind that this is unfiltered data. So it's raw data of how many times someone actually searched for a specific term. So it points towards what, people are collectively searching for. And here's what I came across. Searches for the term egg freezing have been on an up curve in the last 10 plus years. And then searches for IVF have been on a similar up curve. And that makes sense because those two are being utilized more. There's tons of money being invested in egg freezing and assisted reproductive technology companies. There's been an explosion in funding to femtech companies in the last 5 years, and many of them are supporting the egg freezing and assisted reproductive technology industry. So women are all over this fertility preservation thing. They know they're likely to wait to have kids. They know it might be hard to find the right guy. They know they might not feel ready career-wise. And they know that they still have a biological clock that is creating constraints for them. Many of them are also using period tracking apps now. And, before these existed, we just wrote it down in our journal or put it on our phone or something like that. So the question is all this stuff actually helping with fertility? Well, it's definitely getting women to freeze their eggs more. And it's definitely making IVF more readily available for people, especially because there are a lot of employers that are covering that as a benefit for people. But is that actually helping with fertility? Definitely lots of babies are born via assisted reproductive technologies. albeit it's still only a very small percentage of all babies, mostly, being born to more educated and wealthier people. But are any of these things actually helping fertility, which is actually a healthy state of the body in which the tissues are healthy of the body? After I didn't get pregnant in my early 30s, I can't tell you how much time I then took to prepare myself so that if I was to get pregnant, my mind and my body would be in really great condition, and the materials used to make a baby would also be of good quality. And does the mind, body, spirit health get focused on enough today? There's so much focus on the numbers, the hormones, the follicles, the protein, the calories, the fats, all the numbers that people are focusing on. Are you getting the right amounts of things? And yet it seems like there's so much missing. Fertility has been changing for humanity. We're at an inflection point in which the educated and the wealthier groups in society are promoting big shifts in how we procreate. These specific pathways to procreation are literally being innovated by our species. Something natural and innate and inherent is now being done more in a lab, like how people make our drugs or test the latest fast food product, and how we have agriculture set up since the Green Revolution. Our innate powers are becoming overruled. But by what? Where does this fertility technology road lead to? Because as long as women keep freezing their eggs, this pathway will continue to get more popular. And I've always found it ironic that millennials are more environmentally focused, but are now storing the reproductive materials in a refrigerator for decades, when they could have just stored them in their bodies. And have you ever spoken with a couple who has banked embryos that they no longer plan to use? It's a really big deal for them. How we're playing with reproductive technology is certainly not emotionally easy for anyone. But even though on the surface, it kind of looks like fertility is becoming more medicalized, I think there are also some shifts beginning to take place with health and fertility. And I think a lot of these shifts are taking place with men. I'll get back to this in a second, because I first want to get back to this raw data that I found on Google. Now I'm getting to the part that kind of freaked me out. While searches for egg freezing and IVF are on the up and up, searches for the term sex have been on a downward curve since about 2016. So basically, while humans are collectively searching for ways to preserve their fertility and get help to have a baby, we're also searching for sex less. On the internet, at least. Does this match what's happening with human minds and human bodies? So interestingly, there are actually more searches for male fertility than for female fertility. I don't know. Maybe people search for male fertility when they're looking for things like Viagra or, erectile dysfunction, or maybe men are finally learning that they've experienced over a 50% decline in their sperm counts since the 1970s. Or maybe it's nervous women wondering if their fertility challenges are actually their guys. So people are searching less for sex. And in the US, sex and sexual activity are actually declining. That's what the studies are showing. So people are having less sex. They're waiting longer to have sex. And maybe that's all good if you're trying to control the population. But if you're trying to procreate and you want to conceive a child the old-fashioned way, by that I mean, a nice consensual roll in the hay, hopefully, in which both individuals are enjoying it, then you actually have to have intercourse. This trying, quote unquote, trying to conceive thing gets really challenging the longer it goes on. Some studies have found that the longer a couple tries to conceive, the less sex they actually have. So are they getting disheartened? Is it boredom? Is it feeling like we're, some sort of malfunctioning procreation robot? If you assume that you need to have sex in order to try to conceive, here's a finding from one study that you might find interesting. In couples trying to conceive, men who have anxiety or a mood disorder were also found to have less sex. So if they have anxiety or mood disorder, they're having less frequent sex. And also interestingly, men who exercise regularly also have sex more frequently than men who don't. So men, if you want to have a regular sex life, then take care of your mental health and also get your exercise in. But we all know that fertility is just about being in the right place at the right time. For that, the male must be clued into the female's body when she's in her fertile period, letting his animal body read her face, her voice, her scent, her mood, her receptivity, making sure that whatever material he has available is going to produce sperm that can successfully make it through the fluids and tunnels of the female reproductive organs all the way to the egg, waiting for them in the female's fallopian tube. Fertility becomes much more of a numbers game when there are challenges with it, and especially when activities must be carefully orchestrated in a lab to be successful. I think it's time we all face the fact that something is going on with human fertility. But while females are the ones who appear to be tackling the issue head on with all this egg-freezing happy activity, many of the problems lie in major changes that have happened to males. And I'm questioning how much men are really giving their attention to their fertility. Studies show that male infertility is correlated with recreational substance abuse, poor diet, metabolic issues, and we know the prevalence of those these days, exposure to plastics and pesticides, which you're probably aware of, is also rampant, inflammatory issues, certain types of stress, and mental health issues. Okay, yes, and too much bike riding, choking your testicles in tight pants too much, going in a hot sauna, doing other things that impact the temperature of the body parts where the sperm are housed in the male body. And the bottom line is if men don't take care of themselves the way their human testicles need them to, make the healthy choices, eat the right foods for the body type, get enough exercise, sleep, be mentally healthy, maintain the right temperature, don't ingest harmful substances, yada yada, then their fertility also declines. And it has, because the male sperm counts have tanked. But is this cause and effect, or is this correlation? So if you adopt new behaviors, can you impact the fertility part too? And in many cases, yes. Spermatogenesis is regenerative. It's not like men are born with all the sperm they'll ever have, and once they, screw them up or use them all up, it's over. They can be improved as long as spermatogenesis is taking place. And for men, there's no real limiting biological clock like there is with women, although the sperm quality can also change with aging. Lifestyle changes to improve health are actually the ones that will improve fertility. So this is the same for both men and women. So many times you actually don't have to do something special for your reproductive organs because the reproductive material is simply the byproduct of everything else going well in the diet, the lifestyle, digestion, exercise, mental health, the basic things. So if you take care of yourself in the most basic ways, you'll actually get improved fertility. There's really nothing to lose by becoming healthier, especially in the fertility department. The issue is that we are so trained to look for something outside of our health selves to get better, right? We want a drug, we want a supplement, we want a superfood, and we will often overlook the behavioral things that we are doing to contribute to suboptimal health. I mean, people, when I work with them, they don't even know what they did last week. They'll say, oh, this is how I ate in the last week. But if you actually have a person journal about it, they'll realize that their memory of what happened is really different than what actually happened. So we're very selective with our memories. And on top of this, people experience psychological challenges that will affect their behavior as well. So it's memory, but then also there's sometimes psychological challenges going on. So improving one's health physically is actually as much a mental game as it is physical. And this is where I think men are a little bit more at a disadvantage than women, because women are much more likely than men to seek help. And some kind of support is typically needed to make diet and lifestyle changes, even if it's just getting time to go to the gym an hour a day because someone else has agreed to cook dinner or take the kid to school. But men want to be tough and they want to show that they can do things on their own. And I get it. That's not really fair because there's a lot of women who are like that too. It's not just a man thing. Well, actually, there are many studies that show that women are more likely to seek help. So if overall health impacts fertility for males, just as it does for females, how are men doing in the overall health department? Are they helping themselves? Well, there's some good news and some bad news for men. The CDC data shows that males and females both are more overweight and obese than we've ever been, and men are actually slightly more commonly overweight or obese. But frankly, both sexes are in a crisis with obesity. Between 2015 and 2018, over 3/4 of men in the US were overweight or obese, with a BMI greater than or equal to 25. I really hope that you or your partner aren't struggling with this, because I think it's one of the most difficult health conditions to deal with. Even though our logical minds may think it should be easy to solve just by eating less, it's actually a really complicated problem. Now, smoking rates are the lowest they've been in 100 years. Isn't that crazy that the greater population is smoking less but eating more? I find that interesting. On the COVID front, men are dying a little more than women from it, but more women are getting long COVID than men. So I'm not really sure who's winning there, to be honest. People are living longer, though we're having overall fewer children. And collectively, the majority of individuals are struggling with metabolic issues, like I mentioned. These are issues related to diet and behaviors. And instead of having as many children as people did way back when, it sure seems like we're putting all that building capacity that maybe we were putting into children, putting that building capacity into our own bodies. On the good news front, one study found that since the pandemic started, men are exercising more. They're also getting more massages, and they're meditating more. This actually blew my mind. I actually did not know this, but I'm happy about it. Because apparently people who exercise also make more money, though people who make more money have fewer children. So the people who theoretically have more of an opportunity to be healthier and have more money to take care of a family are actually having fewer children. In reality, we find healthy people at all income levels. It's not just, the more money you make, the healthier you are. It's just the statistics are there, right? So I'm throwing out statistics and likelihoods, but statistics don't address really what's happening to the individual. For both men and women in the US, the data shows that people who make over $36,000 in a household of two are more likely to meet the physical activity guidelines for Americans. Somebody deemed that this is how you should exercise, and those people are complying with it. But even in the lower income level households, those are where they have the highest reproductive rates, right? So lower than even 36,000. So if you make very little money, you can pop your kids out, you can have a difficult time affording them. And then if you make too much, then you can afford it. And maybe you're more likely to, be able to take care of your health better, but you also aren't reproducing as much. But if people who make smaller amounts of money have more kids, then why are there so many men and women who do have solid incomes actually feeling like they don't have enough money to have kids? We all need support and guidance when we find ourselves in a pickle. Yes, we all need to be strong and accountable too, because nothing changes unless we do. But in the process of us putting in the work to make changes, we will inevitably have questions, get stuck or frustrated, or sometimes we might even get lazy and need someone to challenge us here and there. We may even be upset with ourselves for our past behaviors, right? But we need to move on to be the healthiest self. So females, your males may not be doing as well as they want them to be, or that you want them to be. And males, you need to know that your improvement in your health and your fertility is actually what your body and your mind and your lover wants from you. because no one wants to take the medical fertility path if you don't have to. It's not fun. It's awkward. It's painful for the woman. It's awkward for the man. It's emotionally horrible. It's expensive. And it's certainly not getting at the root causes of many of the actual fertility issues that people are experiencing that I mentioned earlier: suboptimal health, poor diet, bad sleep, things like that, environmental toxins, and more. And if you're going to have a kid, don't you actually want to be a healthy mom or a healthy dad? Or do you want to have the kid and then feel terribly tired and unhealthy and not great? Because it's actually even harder to get healthier after you have a kid, because you have even less time to take care of yourself. The time to work on your health is now if you're wanting to have kids in the future. So men, get out there, educate yourself, ask for help, put the work in, and succeed in improving your health. And in doing so, you're going to improve your fertility too. And that has an impact on you, and has an impact on your partner, and has an impact on other people in your life right now. And it's going to positively impact the future generations. I really, really want to see more men taking care of their health. So keep it up. Keep up the good work. I really want to see this happen so that we can have healthier kids in the future. So get on it, friends. If you are embarking on a fertility journey and are ready to have your mind blown about what your body is really capable of and how it's impacted by the environment, then check out my book, The Ayurvedic Guide to Fertility. You can actually download the introduction to the book for free on my website at heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, Grzych.com. Read the intro for free and then buy the rest of this fertility enlightening book pretty much anywhere books are sold. I want to thank you for listening to this show. It brings me great pleasure to provide this content to you. I also want to let you know that I'll be making some very amazing announcements soon. And if you're not already on my email list, then I encourage you to go over to my website and subscribe to my email list so that I can keep you informed about these announcements that are going to be coming up very soon. So my website is heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, Grzych.com. And I look forward to getting these important announcements to you very soon and connecting. Thank you for tuning in and dropping in with us today. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. I really want to hear your feedback. To learn more about my work, visit heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, Grzych.com. And meet me here next time on The Wisdom of the Body.